Good day, this is Terry Difazio, and you're watching Dial It Up. Today, my esteemed guest is Miss Vicki Strong, representative and newly re-elected representative from Orleans, Caledonia.
That's right.
Congratulations on being re-elected.
Thank you so much. It was a little nerve-wracking type of election season, but I'm just grateful to all those who supported me, and I'm happy to go back and represent my constituents. So thank you for everyone who voted and got out there this election, and I'm glad to return to Montpelier.
Well, it was different this time for you because Sam Young did not go for re-election, did he?
No, Sam Young and I served 10 years together, and he is a young man and has other horizons on his view, so he gave up his seat, and Catherine Sims ran, and with several other people, so there was 5 of us running for 2 seats, and myself and Catherine Sims won.
Of course, you see, I predicted you'd get the most votes, and I was right.
I was shocked, but I was grateful.
First time this century I have been right. But didn't I predict that?
Yes.
I said that I thought you would get the most votes, and you did.
Thank you.
I would like to ask your opinion of what is going on in Montpelier. How do you feel about, for example, everything's done on Zoom meeting now. So I would like to get your opinion on that.
Well, thankfully, it got us through last session to come up with our budget and help folks who were hit hard by the pandemic, and we were able to function. And obviously, it's seeming that pandemic is still going, and we'll have to resume our virtual sessions when we go back. But I really believe with all my heart that we need to stick to policies and legislation that's not controversial. In other words, it's just helping the function of our state, and stay away from the more social types of agendas, because you cannot debate well on Zoom. You just can't. So I'm hoping, and I will lobby for the fact that we can function to keep our state going and our budget and deal with the challenges there. That's enough challenge right now. But we've got to stay away from things that take debate on Zoom that's controversial. We need to do that in person.
I tend to agree with you. We think you touched upon this the last time you were on, and I can see where that would be very difficult, wouldn't it?
It's very difficult. There were times I wanted to speak on certain issues in the last session, but you have 150 legislators on a Zoom meeting, and you have to raise your little blue hand, and the speaker will call on you, and certainly you can do that. There's nothing preventing you. But there's just only so much time you can spend on a Zoom meeting. It's very draining. You're not there in person to really see the person's body language, and there's just so many things you can't really do just speaking out on Zoom.
I tend to agree with you on a couple of different levels. One was I've noticed that the British Parliament is very, very empty. And some people, sometimes the Prime Minister is on Zoom or whatever, and I'll tell you, that takes all the fun out of it for me.
Oh, that's right. They like to throw things.
Oh, they do. They yell a lot, yeah. They can be quite rude to each other. But
that's right.
So I can see where you'd be frustrated. You wouldn't be able to see other people or be in the same room. It is my opinion, and I don't know how you feel about this, but it's almost as if we're losing some of our humanity.
Oh, I would say so. It's a very odd phenomenon when you're on a lot of Zoom meetings. At the end, you feel like you've been out somewhere and social, but you haven't. And it's a little disorienting, actually. And I've had days during legislature when we'd had so much Zoom that I just couldn't think. afterwards. My brain was like, something sucks it out of you. I don't know what it is. It's called Zoom brain.
Yeah, well, there's only so much sitting and looking at a monitor that you can do.
Right.
I know that when I'm scheduling and editing, I have to get up and move every half hour or so, or I start falling asleep. It probably, and I have been on Zoom meetings, and it's been the same way.
Yeah.
Were you aware of a sign on I-89 down by Montpelier that said COVID-19 vaccine exempt from liability?
Right.
Were you aware of that sign?
I was, and I'm in a group for vaccination rights and have been in the legislature for 10 years saying a lot of things about vaccines that, first of all, they are exempt from liability, and that's a very serious issue to me. And so that was just somebody's free speech, putting up a sign, and it was taken down fairly quickly, wasn't it?
Yes, that was the next thing I was going to ask you about. VT Trans took the sign down an hour after the press release went out, and it was up for about 4 hours or so. But the thing that got me, and I bet you know about this too, this seems to go against the June 19th order not to remove any protest graffiti such as Black Lives Matter banners, which have not been removed.
Right.
Were you aware of that?
Yes, and I think we're seeing that quite a bit in our culture right now, where certain issues, certain side is being censored, and that's not free speech, and that's getting dangerously close to what we see in other countries that shut down certain opinions, and if you don't go with what the government's mandating, your voice is censored. So we have to be really careful, and I think the pandemic has brought out more of seeing censorship happening.
Yeah, I agree too. I wasn't aware of this until I read it from one of the 802 Freedom Group
Right.
on Facebook. I guess Maine is now having some of these. And you brought up some, you just got me off on another track altogether.
Okay.
But this is good. If vaccine companies are not liable for any side effects, then would it be fair to say that the people taking them would give up their right to sue if something happens, if it was voluntary as opposed to mandatory? If it was mandatory that you took this thing and you got very, very sick or died,
Right.
don't you think that they should be held responsible for it?
Well, absolutely, and people, children. I have a constituent whose family lost their daughter from a flu shot. That was about 10 years ago, and this happens. This is not just some very odd, strange phenomenon that someone would become ill from a immunization. It does happen, and all our bodies are different, react differently to different things. There's a lot of things in an immunization, a vaccine, that is not just the vaccine. There's a lot of additives. There's metal in there. It affects children and even adults. And so the long-term picture of vaccines is not really being told to us in a lot of ways. We should have informed consent before we have a vaccine, and we should have the choice of when and how and if we take one. So the whole idea of mandated vaccines, to me, is not even constitutional.
No, I agree there, because the less choice that you give people, you are running down this path of totalitarianism.
Yes.
Which isn't, by the way, socialism or communism. This goes all the way to fascism.
Well, it scares me a little bit that we may not see our governor or other folks in the medical field say it's mandated as a whole, but we may see certain jobs where, oh, well, you're a healthcare worker, you can't work in this hospital unless you're vaccinated. You can't be the school teacher if you're not vaccinated, and that will spread into our society in a way that we just start thinking, I have to have that, and I believe that is infringing on our rights.
I've heard that same thing, that if you're in the medical field, working in a doctor's office or in a hospital, what I find it even more interesting is when I do go to Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, because I had a hip replaced last year.
Yes.
The last time I went there, doctors and nurses are not just wearing face masks, they're wearing shields over the masks. And it's like, I need to ask your opinion about this. If this virus is so deadly and spreads so easily, then why do they have to stick a cotton swab all the way to the back of your nose to get a sample?
I don't know. I've never, I've never had the test, but I hear it's a lulu to have that all the way up your nose. That doesn't make sense. My daughter, actually, who lives in Memphis, Tennessee, came down with COVID and was tested positive. She does have the symptoms, but she's had a very bad cold and lost her taste, the sense of taste, and so she's almost well. But she wore a mask everywhere in public. Literally never had a time when she wasn't wearing a mask. So my question is, well, how did she get it then? She and her husband very conscientious about social distancing, wearing the mask, and she doesn't know. But so there's a lot of unanswered questions, and we're just kind of going down this path and assuming that everything we're told is right, when I don't think we know a lot of things for sure.
Oh yeah, and by the way, I've had 2 COVID tests. I took one a month before I went in for my operation. I took one a month after. The tests aren't horrible.
Yeah.
The first time I think I had my eyes watered a little bit. The second time I sneezed. It isn't. I don't know. Some of these tests I see on the internet are disgusting.
Oh.
I don't know why they're doing that, because it really, what they did it to me, it wasn't that invasive. It really wasn't.
Right.
But if this virus was that contagious, if it is that deadly and it spreads so easily,
right,
why don't they just have you sneeze or cough or spit on a swab?
Yes.
Why do they have to go all the way in your nose for it?
Yes.
Because I think what they're going to do, and we'll get on this other point later, is they're going to amplify this and find something.
Could be, and I don't know. Do they have your DNA from that test? I mean, there's just a lot of things. What are they sticking that up there that far for, and what are they getting out of that?
I was told this because that's where the best place to get a sample, but it still doesn't make any sense. Like I said, if you said it was your daughter?
Yes.
If your daughter and her husband are that meticulous and do everything that they're told and they still caught it, that means that what they're telling them, I don't think is working, because we've gone through social distancing, we've gone through a quarantine, we've gone through the masks, and now it's back worse than ever.
Right. And viruses are very odd things. They have a mind of their own, and if we're trying to keep track like they're doing, I don't know in the long term what it'll lead our society towards. A lot of more fear and anxiety than we've ever had before. It's just, I think, all the way around something that we need to be cautious about, how we're tested and what about the vaccine. There's just a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah, and this, I mean, we could spend an hour on this, because this thing seems to branch out everywhere. Scare tactics will eventually get found out. When I was in college in 1969 to 71 the first time, we were told things about drugs that now we would look at it and go, are you crazy?
Yeah.
For example, we were told that if you and your lover made a child while under the influence of LSD, your babies would have chromosome damage. That's stupid. That's absolutely stupid. Or the other one was, if you smoked pot 3 times, you were automatically declared legally insane.
Right.
And how stupid is that?
Well, and also, I'm thinking back when I was younger, we were told if you have a cold or the flu or something else like shingles or whatever, your own immune system fights those things and actually builds up your immune system. And now we're throwing vaccines at everything, and I think in some ways short-changing our own immune systems.
Could be. It has to do also with, I think vaccines are good up to a point, but when you start giving people a whole bunch all at once, I think that's very, very bad.
Yes.
I mean, I've had the shingle shot. I had chicken pox, and I had the shingle shot, but like I said, that was my choice. If the next person doesn't want to do that, then that's fine.
Right.
And I'm not going to guilt somebody and saying, "Oh, you're carrying this disease and I could get it." To me, that doesn't fly. And I'm finding too much of that.
Yeah.
Are you finding that also?
Well, yeah. It's something called the common good. If you're not getting that immunization, you're not helping the common good. Whereas the herd immunity, is that what they call it?
Herd immunity.
It happens when people get the actual disease and develop the resistance over time. And I think we have a lot of misinformation, and I'm trying to keep up with studying and finding out things about how this is supposed to work, how our own immune systems are supposed to work. I spend a lot of time staying healthy. I take vitamins and eat well and exercise, and I work hard at my own immune system.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what our responsibility is take care of ourselves.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be interesting if you apply the same logic to say, oh, well, you really shouldn't. You have the choice whether to drink alcohol or not,
Mm-hmm.
or smoke pot or not.
Mm-hmm.
But with a mask, oh no, you've got to wear that.
Yeah.
It's like, I think these other behaviors are a bit more destructive.
Mm-hmm.
What have you been hearing from your constituents regarding these mandates? Have they spoken to you directly and expressed an opinion one way or the other?
Yes. I think up till fairly recently, within the last couple weeks, people were okay with the governor's suggestions. Some were suggestions and not necessarily a mandate, and some mandates have come down. I think that as we look at our governor, he's doing his best and trying his best, but at times we think, where is our personal liberty starting to be infringed upon? And recently, a situation in a local church where there was a pastor who had supposedly a congregant test positive. We're starting to see what is the balance here. When can or should not the governor or the government come in and say, point fingers at certain places and meetings and say no, or like Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Like, oh, sorry, you can't have multi-families. And I'm just starting to think, and my constituents are saying it's getting too much. And with schools telling young children to basically tattle on their parents.
Yeah,
You're putting children in the middle of a situation where they didn't make the choices of who came for Thanksgiving or where they went. I just feel that it's getting a little bit, to me, scary. We're infringing upon people's consciences and their privacy and personal responsibility.
Yeah. Well, isn't it funny you can't have anyone in your house for Thanksgiving, but it's okay to go to Walmart afterwards with a whole bunch of people you don't even know and shop like crazy?
Well, see, that's the hard thing. This isn't always consistent. It just doesn't make sense. If we're using some common sense and doing our best, I just think it's, in a way, an excuse to shut some businesses down.
I don't understand why they would want that. Wouldn't Vermont want more businesses up and running?
Well, that's the point. We need that. And if we lose more restaurants or meeting locations, bars and stuff, someone said, why does the bar shut down at 10? Does the virus just go away? All of a sudden it pops up or whatever. Who's dictating the time? What difference does that make?
Yeah, the virus has to go to bed after 10. Right?
I don't know. You start looking at things and you see inconsistencies.
Yeah, well, the first thing that popped up to me was when this whole thing started. It was okay to go to a liquor store or a gun shop, but not church. Mm-hmm. And then they rationalized that, well, fewer people go to gun shops and liquor stores. Well, I can't tell you, I've seen them pretty crowded at times.
Yeah.
The other one was, it was okay for a woman to have an abortion, but you can't get a new hip.
Right.
You can't get a new knee.
Oh, I know.
And I don't find the logic in that either.
No.
And I think it's the inconsistency that may have people the most upset, and I hope it does upset them.
Yes. I hope so. It's the balances we have in our country. Thank God we have freedom of speech and to say what our opinions are and how we feel about things, and contact your local legislators or have a demonstration or put up a sign. That's what our country's all about.
Mm-hmm. I want to go on record right now as saying that I contact my legislators all the time,
mm-hmm.
and 2 of them never get back to me.
Mm.
So I go to 2 people that aren't my legislators, and they always get back to me. You and Mark Higley
mm-hmm.
always reply.
Oh, well, good.
And I respect you immensely for that.
Mm.
And 2 of my representatives always get back to me, and 2 don't.
Mm.
And I wonder about them, and I wonder about their dedication to the job that they're doing. I want to ask you about these new testing methods and how they keep changing. Are you aware of what's changed with them?
Not really, no.
I've read a couple of different articles. They're using what they call they're increasing the cycles. Mm-hmm. I think it started at 20 cycles and now it's up to 40. Mm-hmm. I spoke with a man yesterday from Cabot, and he said that the actual number that Vermont is using is 37, which means they're picking up a lot of background noise.
Okay.
So this, of course, is going to give you a lot of false positives.
Right. And so that in general brings up the question, the statistics we're seeing about how many new COVID cases or that sort of thing, where are these numbers really coming from? Or the deaths from COVID? You know, I grieve the loss of anyone who passes away from any disease or complication, but do we call something death from COVID if it was already a problem in some way? Those numbers are kind of, ambiguous at times.
Yeah, and I've noticed that if you really dig further and look into some of these medical cases, they aren't death from COVID, but death with COVID.
Yeah.
In other words, you can have a terminally ill cancer patient that's going to die within a month regardless, and they just happen to catch COVID on top of it.
Right.
And there's more Medicare money in saying that it was from the virus.
Yes. Like you said, a lot of unanswered questions. Why did my daughter have something almost like a bad cold, whereas why does a 63-year-old pass away from it, who still is in pretty good health? So there's still a lot of questions that we need answered.
I have two friends in Florida, and Florida's an open state. They're not going to quarantine ever. Your governor said, no, we're not going to ever quarantine again. They both got COVID. They were sick for 3 weeks, and now they're recovering.
Yeah.
They say they're a little sluggish still, but still, I mean, one of them, I believe, is 65, and the other one is 67. But you'll find that the majority of cases are people 80 or 90.
Yeah. Yes,
And
more elderly.
Yes. My wife thinks that she had it in January, and she got over it.
Right.
But she said, yeah, it is rough, but she's 72.
Right.
So that proves to me that if your immune system is compromised, most anything is going to really get to you.
Right. Yeah, a lot going on in our country right now, and a lot going on with the national scene. I just want people to have hope that as we go into the winter months, not to feel some sadness, despair, or hopelessness, that there's still a lot of good things going on, and still a lot of unanswered things going on the national level. Our national election, who's going to be president, that is not decided. And fake news is continually throwing at us. That's been done and decided, and it has not. So we need to just take one day at a time and live a joyful life. Don't let the national news and the pandemic scare rob you of peace and joy and hope for the future.
Well, I'm a firm believer that this virus is real, but I'm not buying into the hype. Okay, you should take care. You should take care anyway.
Right.
I mean, you really don't. What used to bother me before all this started was, I would go into a room, and I'd be videotaping an event, and everybody is hacking up a lung. It's like, if you're that sick, why don't you stay home?
Right.
Well, they go, well, I can't. I'll lose my job if I'm not here. And I'm saying, this really isn't right either.
Yes, that's right.
And I wish people would have the option to do that. Lastly, isn't it interesting, very interesting, that we seem to go from crisis to crisis. And now all of a sudden the opiate crisis isn't front page anymore.
Yes, and that's a shame. The opiate epidemic has been very on the radar of the legislature and our previous governor, and still with our current governor, but we just kind of put that all on the back burner. And I was just at my doctor's office a few days ago, and they were mentioning how bad it really is, that they are seeing a lot of patients, and it's just not something that's really been noticed and talked about as much as it could be right now. That these folks need help, and they need the facilities to go through the detox and things that they need, counseling. It's just not going to go away.
Yeah. I used to be a counselor, and I'll tell you, things have changed to the point where I'm glad I'm not in it anymore because they're really not addressing the issues themselves. They're like giving it a bunch of Band-Aids. I will tell you of one interesting thing that I heard about a long time ago. In Israel, if you're an opiate addict, you go into the hospital and they give you a massive blood transfusion. You don't go through any withdrawal. You're basically fixed in a weekend.
Really?
That doesn't mean you may not go back and do it over again, but the whole withdrawal, which is what scares most opiate addicts, that is taken out of it.
Wow, I have not heard about that.
Yeah, I heard about it from a woman that I was seeing as a therapist when I went through a divorce, and she was telling me, she's Jewish, and she was telling me all about this that they're doing this thing. When was that? 1987 or 88.
Oh, okay.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And
that is interesting. And unfortunately, a lot of folks who would never have taken drugs, so to speak, have had surgeries or an injury. They're put on an opiate of some kind, a pharmaceutical drug for pain, and that leads to that sad addiction. So it can hit anybody, any family, any person, and I think our medical community needs to take responsibility for a lot of it.
Yeah, and you brought up a very interesting point, too. Did you know that one of the big opiate providers, prescription opiate providers, was sued because they were pushing so many pills.
Yes.
I saw this on 60 Minutes. There was a place in Florida. People were driving from Ohio to go down there and get all their stuff because it was so easy to get it down there. And when you have a pharmaceutical company whose business is it to make a lot of money,
right,
you'll keep pushing the pills. Although I will tell you, if you don't have the prerequisite for it, I've taken oxys and I've taken Vicodins and all that post-surgically. I didn't really like them. Some people, it's like candy to them, and you have to understand how people are wired.
Right, exactly.
Because I know back in the 70s, people were saying, "Well, you had surgery, tough it out, don't take pain meds," and that doesn't work either because if you're in pain, you're not going to heal.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So yes, and the legislature has done a lot of work on things like prescribing, only giving people, instead of this huge, pill bottle to full, go home, you get 10 and have to see your doctor again. So we're doing, and you can't doctor shop or go from pharmacy to pharmacy. There's just different things we have tried to put in place, but just different people, like you said, react to those differently and can become addicted, even sometimes without them knowing.
One thing I do want to tell everybody, though, there is no drug out there that you take once and are automatically addicted. You have to, it is a learned, I don't know what you call it, you have to have a reinforcer. In other words, it happens, then you keep doing it and you keep getting the reinforcement, and that's what causes addiction.
Okay.
So somebody says, well, yeah, I got a prescription, I took 1 or 2 pills and I was hooked. No.
Yeah.
That you might like it and you might really want more and more and more, but you're not automatically hooked. It doesn't quite work
physically, right?
Yeah, physically for sure. Congratulations on your win in November.
Thank
you. It was really nice to have you on.
Thank you.
And I'm hoping we'll come back and do it again because I think I think people need to know about the legislators that are really trying to do the most to help the state.
Well, thank you. Yes, and we'll have some interesting issues coming up, and particularly our budget being millions of dollars off because of COVID and federal relief. So it's going to be quite a balancing act this year, and then the challenges of the pandemic. So I'd love to help my constituents stay informed, and I love to hear from them, their feedback or what are their concerns. So I always appreciate it.
Thank you very much for being on, Miss Vicki.
Yes.
I'm sure you'll be on again.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, everybody.
This is Terry Difazio for Dial It Up saying we'll see you on the flip side. Have a great day.